sin so that we may be reconciled to God. And that is good news, that reconciliation. But the way to that good news, that we are reconciled, is going to come through the bad news that we're sinners, each and every one of us. And if we don't confront and deal with the bad news, our sinfulness, we'll never get to the good news, our salvation. You see, Isaiah understands the need to confront bad news before we affirm the good. The only way out is to come through the bad. We must know the one that brings us out of darkness into his marvelous light. Because he is the only way. And this is why the prophet Isaiah said rhetorically, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. And he'll not grow tired and weary. His understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary. He increases the power of the weak. And of course you know, or at least I hope you know, I don't want to assume anything, but I hope you know the one who can do exceedingly abundantly all that we ask or think, Jesus Christ. But if you're here today and you don't know him, if you don't know Jesus, the one that brings peace, comfort, salvation, don't let this day end without talking to your elders or pastor about confronting the bad news, your sinfulness, and receiving the good news, your salvation. Don't put the decision off. Because as you know, there is tragic stuff happening every day. We never know what life holds for us. But we know who holds our lives. And we need him, not just for eternity. We need him today. We need him to bear up under the struggles of this earthly existence. But for all of us, there's the pain to walk through, isn't there? And here I'm going to borrow just a little bit from a sermon that Dr. Haddon Robinson, preaching professor at Gordon Conwell Seminary, once gave. I'm doing it from memory, not any tape I have of his. I'm sure he'll forgive me if it's not exact, as long as I capture the big idea. Several years ago, when Dr. Robinson had been called to Gordon Conwell Seminary, he preached a sermon at a session of Vision New England Congress in Heinz Auditorium to about 10,000 people. And he preached on Isaiah 40, specifically verse 31. Those who hope in the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up on wings like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint. And then, without going into a lot of detail, he shared that he had recently gone through a tremendously difficult and painful time in his life. He referred to that time as the dark night of the soul. And he addressed that verse in Isaiah in the trilogy that it's presented, stating that, there are times in life or ministry when you are indeed soaring on wings like eagles. There are those times. And he gave some examples in his own life, and he asked us to think of our own examples. And I remembered soaring on a number of occasions. Getting my driver's license, I was soaring right until I got that first ticket, and then I wasn't soaring so much anymore. My wedding day, Boy, I was soaring high then. The birth of our children. A day that Carlotta and I will always remember was graduating together from Gordon Conwell Seminary. And it was a perfect day in May. Billy Graham was our commencement speaker. It was a really high point, and we were soaring that day. And then Dr. Robinson explained, he said, there are times when you're not quite soaring, but you can run, and you don't grow weary. And again, he gave some personal examples and encouraged us to think of times when that was a reality for us. And I can indeed remember times, I recall times in ministry when the adrenaline kept flowing for a long time. I felt as though I'd run and some kind of spiritual endorphins would kick in, and you just could keep on going. And I felt not weary at all, but I felt energized by the ministry and what was going on in my life. But then Dr. Robinson drew our attention to that last sentence. It says, they will walk and not faint. And he again referred to that painful time in his own life. And he said, sometimes you can just about walk and not faint. There are times when you can barely put one foot in front of the other. Just barely able not to collapse. But God gives you the strength to do what's needed to get through that day. And folks, that's where a number of people are today. That's why Christian community is so important. That's why we need to stand in the gap. That's why we need to be intercessors. That's why we need to be praying for our churches, praying for our country. We need to walk together in faith and in love to hold each other up through life's trials. Because we need to hope in the Lord. We need to encourage others to hope in the Lord. This world needs to put hope in something other than themselves. They need to put hope in the one who can renew their strength, can restore their souls. Pray with me. Dear Lord, there are none of us immune from suffering and pain.